And pseudopodia is the cytoplasmic extension of amoeba. How about reproduction? What is the kind of reproduction amoeba carries out? Excellent. Asexual. Then there are different kinds of asexual reproduction, specifically asexual by? Yes. Asexually by binary fission. For the case of paramecium, what is the kind of structure that paramecium uses for movement? What is the structure used by paramecium for movement? Yes. Sorry? Yes, cilia. It's a very small, tiny hair-like structure. It is found around the paramecium, and it is used for movement. And paramecium specifically, it is known by its shape. It has a shape of shoes. It has a slipper-like structure. The structure it is oval and a slipper-like structure. And the movement is by cilia, but the movement in amoeba it is basically by pseudopodia. And reproduction here, reproduction in paramecium is goes. One means of reproduction in paramecium is either sexual or by what is the sexual? Yes, conjunction. Conjunction is the fusion of two parameciums and they share the nuclear material between them and they divide. So it is either by sexually by conjugation or yes. Exactly. It's either sexual or asexual. Sexually by conjugation and asexually by binary fission. And how about feeding? Yes.
For feeding, amoeba uses
one of? There are two kinds of nucleus present in paramecium. One is the bigger one. We call it macronucleus. Excellent. We call that macronucleus. Macronucleus, it is very important in the digestion of paramecium. Okay? It is important to digest the food that is in the paramecium. The second one is micro. There is macro and micro. So these are the two types of nucleus present in paramecium. Macro has something to do with digestion, but micro it has something to do with reproduction. But the feeding, paramecium takes in food material to itself by a structure called oral groove. There's a groove. So oral groove is the structure. It's like a mouth structure.
Are you going to give us the notes?
I'll give you after the discussion, okay? So oral groove is the opening that paramecium uses to take in the food substances to itself. But there is another material, another structure, which paramecium uses to discharge or to let the digested material out of the body. We call that anal groove. But unlike the nucleus, macronucleus is very important in the digestion of paramecium, food materials in paramecium. But oral groove is the structure that paramecium uses to take in food materials. What is the structure that is used by amoeba to take in food materials? Excellent. Pseudopodia, it is used by amoeba to engulf a food potential material. But for the case of paramecium, it is oral groove. Okay? But they discharge, after digestion, they discharge the unwanted or excess material inside the paramecium. It is discharged by a groove called anal groove. Today we are going to see the rest unicellular organisms that is on the book. The next unicellular organisms that we are going to see today is Euglena. It's a fun name, right? Euglena. Euglena is another kind of unicellular organism. And when we see the structure, it is oval structure. It is oval shaped. Yes, that it's like that. And it uses a structure called flagellum for movement. Okay? The kind of structure present in paramecium for movement. Yes. And amoeba uses false feet or pseudopodia. But for the case of Euglena, they use this flagella. So flagella is like a wing-like structure, and they use it like they create a wave-like structure, and it detects like movement, and they use the movement, the flagella for movement in Euglena. Okay. For the case of reproduction, they carry asexual reproduction like amoeba. Like amoeba. The kind of asexual reproduction specifically they go under binary fission. And when we see there are certain structures present specifically on Euglena. Okay, you have the PDF of the grade 8 book, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you the page and you can study. You can see the shapes and the structures present in Euglena. But there are some specific structures only present in Euglena. It is called eye spot. Eye spot. So eye spot, it's not actually like an eye. Again, it is very sensitive to light. So it leads the Euglena, the cell of Euglena, towards where there is light, because this doesn't have only a single means of feeding habit. Unlike the rest of them, it has two means of feeding. Either Euglena, it prepares its food because it contains chloroplast. Do they have chloroplast?
No.
Do they prepare their own food or they engulf another organism? They engulf. But for the case of Euglena, it has chloroplast and it can prepare its own food. Or, like the other unicellular organisms, it feeds on another unicellular organisms, another microorganisms. So, it is an advantage for Euglena to be able to prepare its own food or to engulf another microorganisms. Okay? Is it clear? Clear?
Yes.
Okay. For movement, it uses flagella, and the reproduction in Euglena is and it has eye spot and it detects light and it prepares its food. And is it an advantage or disadvantage to be able to have a chloroplast? Is it an advantage or disadvantage? Yes.
Advantage.
Because
one day he might, for example, for amoeba, there might be food drainage. Like for example, there's less food to eat.
very good. Yes. So it is an advantage to have two means of feeding. If there is the absence of light, that means the Euglena will not be able to process its food, right? So it goes to feed on another microorganism. So it's an advantage for this microorganism, which is known as Euglena. And the habitat of Euglena is mainly in fresh waters. It lives in freshwater bodies. Like, what is the other microorganism that lives in freshwater bodies? Yes. Amoeba. Amoeba is also like a free living or amoeba. Either it's a free living or
Parasites.
exactly. And the specific kind of the parasitic form of amoeba like we said last time, it can cause serious disease. And there are different species of it, and the specific kind of amoeba that causes amoebic dysentery, it is called histolytica amoeba. Okay, so Interamoeba histolytica, that is the specific species that causes these dysentery diseases. And it is also free living, and when the situation doesn't favor amoeba to survive or to reproduce, it forms a kind of hard structure, and we call that structure, like it's a stage in amoeba, we call that cyst. It forms a tough kind of covering, and it stays dormant, like dormant means inactive, for some period of time until the situation favors amoeba to reproduce itself again. So when the situation is favorable to amoeba, it again reproduces. It starts the process, like reproducing and feeding and movement. But if there is like dry condition like this, and where the situation is not favorable for amoeba to reproduce, it stays in a cyst form. Okay? But when there is a good situation, or when the situation favors amoeba to reproduce, again it starts the whole cycle. Yeah. No? It was not terrible. So, Euglena is the other unicellular organism. There is another unicellular organism that we are going to see, and I'm sure you know this very well. The first one is bacteria. So bacteria. What do you know about bacteria before I start the discussion? Yes, sir.
It is useful and not useful at the same time.
It can be useful and also it can be harmful. How?
Useful because we use it for our digestion.
Some of them.
And harmful because it might cause an infect, it might make you sick.
Yes. Good. Yes.
It's the smallest unicellular organism. And like Euglena has a flagellum.
Very good. Yes. So you mentioned a very good important point. They're smaller microorganisms. They're small, and also obviously as we call them microorganisms. That's why. And like there's a common characteristics between Euglena and bacteria because they have the same structure. They use the same structure for movement, which is flagellum. They use the same structure for movement, Euglena and this one. So now try to comprehend between these unicellular organisms. Try to take out the common characteristics they have. Try to identify and distinguish between them, okay? Try to see like the differences between them and the similarity they have because it's very important for you guys to identify all this. And bacteria, they use flagella for movement. Leila, what can you tell me about bacteria? Yes, I mean, you mentioned a very good point. Some of them are harmful, some of them are useful. So we divide them into two. Yes.
I think their reproduction is asexual.
He thinks the reproduction in bacteria is asexual. Yes, that is true. They go under asexual reproduction, like
Amoeba or people.
yes, it is binary fission. How about their feeding? What do you think feeding is in amoeba?
I think they feed on other organisms.
Is she?
From decomposing animals.
Very good. They eat, or they have the ability to decompose a dead organism. So either they decompose or some of them have chloroplasts and they can make their own food. Okay? Some of them have chloroplast. They contain chloroplast. They also have.
Are those the harmful ones or useful?
It's just a general. And what makes them different? What makes them different from the other here is they share the same kind of structure with plant cell, which is having cell wall. Cell wall is present in plant cell, right?
Yeah.
But it's also present in bacteria. And when we see the structure of bacteria, they are known to lack a very, very important kind of structure, which is
Nucleus.
excellent. They don't have nucleus. They don't have any defined nucleus, but instead they have only the nuclear material. Okay, they don't have defined nucleus. But for the rest of them, do they have nucleus?
Some.
Yes, they have. Even this one, it has two, right? Macro and micro nucleus. The rest of them, they contain nucleus. But here, for the case of bacteria, they don't have defined nucleus. Rather, they only have nuclear material. And also, every unicellular organisms, they are known to lack. They are known for. They don't have any nuclear like cell organelles. What are the cell organelles that you remember? What are cell organelles?
Or what?
Cell organelles. Can you remind me the list of cellular organizations? Cellular organizations.
Plants.
Those are multicellular organisms. I'm talking about the cellular organization. Plants, they are organisms, I don't know. I'm talking about the cellular organizations and they come last. Yes. Good. Cell. But before we bring cell here at the beginning, that is true. Like these are the smallest building blocks of life, right? There are smaller structures than the cell that makes up the cell itself. Yes.
Atoms?
No.
Cell organelles?
Yes, cell organelles. So organelles are structures that make up the entire cell. These are parts found within the cell, and they are very important and they have their own function inside a cell. So can you tell me one cell organelle? Izana,
Yes.
try. Can you tell me an organelle in the cell?
Organ.
Not organ. Organelle.
Organelle.
That is a structure, any structure found in the cell. Not cytoplasm is the place, like the space in the cell. Nucleus is one organelle. Ryan. There are lots of there are many organelles.
Cell membrane.
Exactly, cell membrane,
Cell wall.
cell wall,
Vacuole.
huh?
Vacuole.
Vacuum.
Vacuole, that is true.
Mitochondria.
Mitochondria, that is right.
Chloroplast.
Chloroplast. Yes, it's an organelle found inside a plant cell.
Cytoplasm?
Cytoplasm, it's the space that contains the organelles or that holds the organelles. It's not an organelle itself, but it's just a space where the organelles are found. So there are different organelles. Multicellular organisms, the cell of a multicellular organism is known to have different organelles in its inside. But for the case of unicellular organisms, they lack these organelles. They don't have that organelles inside their body. Okay? But the organelle that is found here in the cell of amoeba, what is it? They have an organelle, right? Organelles.
Nucleus.
Yes, they have nucleus, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's an organelle. It's present in amoeba and also in paramecium. they don't have nucleus, but rather they have only nuclear material. And where is the habitat of bacteria? From this one. Where does it live? Where do we find bacteria?
Everywhere.
Dirty places.
It's a feeling. It's a feeling.
It's a feeling?
Free living.
Free living.
It's everywhere. Damp places.
What did you say?
It's everywhere.
Bacteria are everywhere. Everywhere. Right? They live everywhere. They can be like free living. We find them in the air, find them everywhere. Not only dirty places, okay? Because there are also some bacteria found in the air. So they live everywhere. Even there are some bacteria in our stomach, right? Yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's not dirty, is it?
they're clean.
Yeah. There are some useful bacteria, and bacteria are used in a very important process called fermentation. Can you define the word fermentation? Fermentation. Yes.
I think it's during reproduction.
No, it's not. It doesn't have anything to do with reproduction. Like that sound. It makes it sound like that, but it doesn't have anything to do with reproduction.
It's when microorganisms use aerobic respiration.
Focus. He mentioned a very important point, aerobic respiration, but it's just simply fermentation is the process of converting a sugar into some kind of alcohol. Okay, so this yes, huh?
At beer making.
Yes. Beer making. So we'll see which one converts that. From these unicellular organisms, one of the unicellular organisms is very important in the process of that one. And also, this is very, very important in the production of yogurt, cheese, and different kinds of beverages.
Also yeast.
Yeast.
Yes, yes,
Right.
they are going to see. That is the fifth unicellular organisms that we are going to see. Yeast. When we see yeast, the structure is round. It has circular structure, and it is very important in the fermentation of some beverages and also in the production of making bread. Okay, we use yeast, and when we see the movement, does it move? What do you think is the structure that yeast uses for movement?
Moves.
Moves?
Yeah.
Does it have any locomotory structure? We call like the structure that an organism uses, we call that locomotory structure. Does it have any locomotory structure? Yeast cells.
I was thinking
She literally said it. Movement.
It doesn't have any locomotory structure. Okay? It doesn't have any locomotory structure. But just what does it do? Well, in times of reproduction, the type of reproduction that yeast carries out, Fortuna, sit up straight. Right?
no, it's not.
The kind of reproduction that yeast carries out is called, is it sexual? Do you think it's sexual or asexual?
Sexual.
Or both.
Okay, it's asexual reproduction. Asexual, but not by binary fission. It doesn't carry out binary fission. Binary fission is the kind of reproduction carried out by
Euglena, Paramecium,
Bacteria.
bacteria.
so. But for the case of yeast, it's asexually by budding. So budding is just creating a small bud. Bud is the kind of structure that grows out of the yeast cells. Okay, and it what bursts, then shares the nuclear material into the newly growing bud.
What?
Okay. But
No, I said when it says budding, how
like this, it starts to grow with this structure. This is, let's say, this is the parent yeast cell, and it divides the nucleus, and later on, when this bud grows, it shares the nucleus to the newly growing bud. So this one becomes a bud itself, and it becomes a parent cell. Okay? So this is the process of budding, and only carried out in yeast cell. So it's different from the other kind of reproduction, the sexual reproduction.
Which is the structure of a yeast circle?
Yes, it is circle, unlike the other structures. The structure of Nucleina, it is more like resembles paramecium, like it's oval, but here it looks like a shoe, a shape of shoe, paramecium. But amoeba has definite or indefinite shape. Is it regular or irregular? It doesn't have defined.
What kind of shape?
Sorry?
What kind of shape?
Slippery shape, amoeba. It has a slippery shape. Is it clear so far?
You need
Clear?
to finish yeast. How does it?
Yes, the importance, also the importance of yeast. Haven't I mentioned this one? The use of yeast, it is very important in the process of fermentation, like making injera. Leila's
Bread.
what? Bread. Leila, locally made beverages. What are they? Allah. Edge. That's also yes, beer. So it requires the use of yeasts because they are very important in the process of yeast. And they grow like a tiny strands. They have strands like this. If you see a structure of yeast, have you seen mold? Mold.
Yeah.
When you close a container that has food for a long period of time,
Yeah.
it grows mold,
Yeah.
right? Yes. Have you seen layering-like structure? That is like the. It grows like here. It has a small thread-like structure.
It's like a balloon.
No.
No, a balloon with a string.
Yes, it looks like that one. Yes. But inside the circle thing, it contains pores. And when it bursts, again, it grows like many of them. So the structure, the strand is called hyphae. Okay, the thing that they stand on, it is called hyphae. And it is a spore containing the circle thing, it contains the spores. When it bursts, it is another means of reproducing itself. So yeasts are used in the process of fermentation. Fermentation, do you remember from last year, there's a formula for aerobic and anaerobic respiration.
Yes.
Aerobic respiration is a kind of respiration that uses or that requires
Air, oxygen.
oxygen. But for the case of anaerobic respiration,
Glucose.
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 Glucose is a sort of sugar, right? Glucose is directly going to be converted into ethanol
Plus.
and plus
Carbon
carbon dioxide. So this is fermentation. Okay? So yeasts convert some sort of sugar into a form of alcohol and carbon dioxide. Okay, so this is the formula for fermentation. Clear?
Clear.
Do you have any questions? So I think if we have time, I will give you the note. Otherwise, I will give you the page numbers, and so that you can take the note yourself.
But means we don't have a book.
I sent you the PDF. Right? He shared.